जय जय गोविंद जय हरि गोविंद, 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 जय हरि गोविंद, जय जय गोविंद। ओम ब्रह्मानंदम परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतस्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ओम Take your book. Om Arjuna Uvacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetrajnamevacha Yetadveditumicchami Jnanam Jneyam Cha Keshava Shri Bhagavanuvāca Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramitya Vidhiyate Yetadyo Vetitam Prahuhu Kshetrajñayiti Tadvidaha Kshetrajñam Chapi Mam Vidhi Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata Kshetra Kshetrajñayor Jnanam Yatta Jnanam Matam Mama So on analysis, Kshetrajna is the same. Kshetram janati iti kshetrajna. The one who knows the kshetra. Kshetra means a field of experience. The one who knows the field of experience, in other words, one who is the content of the knower of the objects of the world. And he is the kshetrajnaha, the jnaha, that is awareness. The content of the knower is jnaha. But then the one who knows the world is called kshetrajnaha. The knower and the field of experience he knows. Knower minus the field of experience becomes not the knower, the very knowledge, because of which he is a knower. He becomes a knower with reference to something known. Between the knower and the known, the difference is this, that the known cannot know me, I know the known. I see an object outside, I see my thought, but thought cannot know me. The thought doesn't objectify me, I objectify my thought. In the sense, the thought doesn't see me, in the sense the thought of an object which doesn't see me, but whereas I see the object. From ignorance onwards, everything that I see is an object that I know, and the knower is the aham, the I. I, the aham, is not subject to objectification. And this Bhagavan said that this kshetrajna is not enclosed in your body, even though it looks as though it is enclosed. Like even space, it looks as though it is conditioned by a pot, but from the standpoint of the space, it is not conditioned. If you look at space from the pot standpoint, and then the space looks as though conditioned to become pot space and the jar space and tumbler space, but from the standpoint of the space itself, there is no division whatsoever. Similarly, from the standpoint of I, the awareness, there is no division, it is indivisible awareness, but looks as though divided, looks as though it is conditioned, and you get as though there are pockets of awareness. Each individual seems to be an isolated being who seems to be an awareful being, and another person is an awareful being. In between there doesn't seem to be any awareness or anything. But from the standpoint of awareness, if you look at the space which seems to limit one being and the other, I, the physical body, is conditioned by space, and the other physical body also occupying some other place. I occupy place P, and he occupies place P1. And therefore the one between the P and P1, again there is space in which neither P is there nor P1 is there. Means I am here or he is there, and this space also, the body that is conditioned by space here, body that is conditioned by space there, and in between the space that is obtaining, all the three of them, well, that which is behind all the three of them, and that one cannot be divided by space, because that which obtains in space, that which is conditioned by space, well, is limited by space itself, because it has got a dimension. So since it has a dimension, it has a spatial limitation, one is different from the other, each occupying his own place. But then the one that is not divided space, in as much as that which is unconditioned by space, behind the very space itself, because of which I am aware of space, and that awareness is when the space is, and awareness is even when the space is not. And therefore he said, understand, I am the kshetrajna, an unconditioned awareness, an unlimited awareness, which I said, Sat Chit Anandaha. It is Chit means awareness, not Chittam, please. Chittam is a different thing, it's a faculty of memory, is called Chittam, whereas Chit means awareness. Sat means that which abides in all the three periods of time is Sat. Awareness is Chit, and it lacks nothing, and it accommodates everything. Therefore it is Ananda. All that I seek in my life is indeed Satchidananda, and what I am is what? Asatchidananda. So what I am is Satchidananda, what I seek is Satchidananda. Therefore Bhagavan says here, Etad jnanamiti proktam ajna. No. He said, no, that's not this sentence. Later he says, Kshetra kshetrajnayoho jnanam yatta jnanam matam mama. So this jnanam, kshetra kshetrajnayoho yad jnanam, this knowledge, so a knowledge, a discriminative knowledge, a knowledge which takes the kshetra as the kshetra and the kshetrajna as the kshetrajna. This is called knowledge. If you know the true as true, it is knowledge. It is a proper knowledge. If you take the true as true, it is knowledge, it is truth. It is a true knowledge. If you take the true as untrue, it is what? It is a false knowledge. It is erroneous knowledge. If you take the untrue as true, it is what? Erroneous knowledge. And suppose you take the untrue as untrue, it is truth. It is truth knowledge. Therefore, the kshetra should be taken as kshetra, and the kshetrajna is to be taken as kshetrajna. One is independent, the other becomes dependent, and therefore one is after me, I shine off myself. Everything else shines after me. I become self-effulgent, everything else is shining after me, and therefore I don't depend for my fullness upon anything. And this fact recognized, he says, and that is called, this recognition is called knowledge. So this knowledge, he says, kshetra kshetrajnayoho yajnanam tad jnanam matam mama. This alone is knowledge. And if this knowledge is not there, then anything that you have is not valid knowledge at all. Because a knowledge gained by a false fellow cannot be considered knowledge. A knowledge gained by a man who is valid in his thinking and in his own self-appreciation, it alone can be knowledge. A dreamer, whatever he gathers in dream, suppose he gains a degree in dream, he gets graduated in dream and comes out, and he's not going to get a job outside because he's a graduate for, well, in the dream, whatever that is valid is not valid because the fellow himself is a false fellow, and what he gathers is not that valid at all. Similarly, a man who gathers knowledge, even though objectively the knowledge may be useful, all right, but at the same time, insofar as he is concerned, so his life is concerned, it is an unsettled life because himself has not settled account with himself. And the one who has not settled account with himself, and he goes about settling account with the world, and it becomes a never-ending settling. And he cannot settle himself, and therefore unsettled always he is because he has not yet settled account with himself. When you point out the world is bad, you must always remember only one finger is popping out towards the world, and there are three fingers pointing towards you. This is a more important thing you should remember. When I say the world is bad, there are three fingers pointing out towards me. Is it not true? The world is bad. There are three fingers pointing out towards me. Therefore, should I not think twice, not twice, thrice? I should think thrice that before I say the world is bad. For there are three fingers towards me, please. Always, this is an important thing for the world is not at all bad, and the one who looks at the world bad, and that mind, the interpreting mind, that alone is bad. I am not satisfied with myself, and therefore everything looks bitter. Like a fellow whose tongue is furred, and he can't taste anything, for him the whole world is bitter, is it not? Your stomach is upset, you find everything is dull in this world. And so the world is not dull, your stomach is dull. And therefore this fellow says the whole world is dull. Thus the mind is embittered and everything looks as though bitter, all because of the problem being not solved here. And this problem, unless it is solved, the soul is not going to rest content. Soul means the individual, the seeker. And this seeker, the individual, is not going to rest content for until he is able to get this, until he is able to settle account with himself and stretches himself in great relaxation. Kadaham tekta manane pare parama pavane chiram vishranti meshyami meru sringa ivambudaha. A great rishi recognizes this problem, and then he just cries out saying that, well, I see these clouds that are there in the south of India. In India, the north are the Himalayas, the great mountains, and there you have these silvery peaks, the snow peaks. And there, these clouds, suppose on the snow peaks, the clouds that sit there on the snow peaks, they are not disturbed. The atmosphere is rarefied. There is not much of breeze there. Therefore, they all sit there as a cap for the very peak itself. Now, it is imagined by this poet. He says he's a saint. He says, well, a body of clouds starts off from the south of India and travels towards the north, keeps moving. And in between, it gets itself fizzled out because of the wind. And again, it composes itself, gathers itself together, and again travels. In between, again gets fizzled out into cloudlets and bits. And again, it has to gather itself. Now, like this, it just all the time disturbed. It wants a place to relax itself. Kadaham Vishranti Meshyami. When will I gain Vishranti? When will I get relaxed? When will I remain undisturbed by this moving wind, the howling wind? Thus the cloud moves along, trying to find out a place. It reaches a height, at last in the north, and that is a place of attraction, north. And therefore the pole that attracts. Unto the north it goes, and there on the peak, silvery peak, so it reaches the height, there it finds my God. Here I find there is no problem at all. Thus it sits there on the top of the peak, completely relaxed. I have reached home. I am quite at home now. There is nothing to disturb me. That's how this Meru Sringe, Ambudaha, the cloud, how it sits there undisturbed by anything. Similarly, Tekta Manane, Pade Parama Pavane, Chiram Vishrantim Kada Yeshyami. When indeed my mind, which is thus all the time disturbed by any passing whiff of a rumor, a passing whiff of a frown upon somebody's face, the man, he did not in fact frown at him, he wanted to only sneeze, and this fellow reads a frown on his face, reads a frown that was not there on his face, and then completely throws himself out of gear. This is indeed the mind that keeps moving all the time, jumping all the time, throwing blame all the time on others. A word I can't stand, a joke sometimes I can't stand, and this is the mind. And this mind which is so easily assailed and disturbed, and this man asks, hey Bhagavan, when it is going to abide in its own glory? The fellow knows, I know that all that I seek is myself alone. Peace is not going to be bought in a bottle. And he knows very well that silence is not something that I have to create in myself. Peace is myself alone. When the meditations are not there, I am all silence. Peace is something that I have got to work for. It is not something that I have got to work for, because when I don't work for, I am all peace. In fact, now I am peace, I go to pieces, all because of I work for peace, I tell you. My mind goes to pieces because it works for peace. It pants for peace, it longs for peace. The very longing is a denial of the peace that it is. It is a very, very craving for it is a denial for. I disown what I am and begin searching for what I am. It is a problem. It is a problem that is an illegitimate problem, and therefore this man recognizes this, and then he tells, hey Bhagavan, when this mind will discover this very clearly, without doubt and error and vagueness, and discover when this mind is able to own up its own glory and abide in its own glory without any let or hindrance, when kadaham chiram vishranti meshyami, gained, it is gained for good, because it is knowledge. Knowledge is something that will not be lost. Memory is something that you will lose all right. If it is a word that you have to remember, you may lose. If it is an experience that you have got to remember, you may lose. And again, if it is an experience, it will go away. That is why it is called an experience. An experience is something that keeps moving all the time. Because in the wake of new experience, old experience cannot remain. And therefore, new experience comes and removes the old experience. And then the experiencing mind must necessarily change. It is meant to change. And if the mind doesn't change, it is no mind at all. No man can complain that my mind is changing. A changing mind is not a problem. As I said, it is the man who takes the changing mind as himself that he becomes a problem. And therefore the whole problem is one of ignorance. And this, in spite of all changes in my mind, the knowledge is that I am all peace, and therefore he is always at peace. The changing mind is always, it is a blessing for this man. You please just think for once, what will be your lot if the mind doesn't change? Even suppose it changes rather slowly, suppose. He says, the mind is quicksilver, sir. It keeps moving so fast, Swamiji. It changes so fast. Therefore, I want a mind that moves slowly. That is not an abiding mind that I have been talking. If it moves slowly, do you know what will happen? I saw a woman standing there. There is, immediately for the perception, there is a relevant modification in my mind. And what would be the modification? The thought modification would be a woman as she is in her dress and as she looks, well, there is a relevant modification. Then immediately I saw an elephant walking. Now what happens? So my mind is so dull and so slow that the woman that I saw will not go away, and the elephant comes inside. And therefore what happened? The elephant is upon the woman. Therefore what do you get now? A woman, elephant, plus elephant. A woman plus an elephant. It is not woman elephant. A woman plus an elephant. And again I see a man, and that fellow is upon the elephant now. And I see a tree, and it is standing on the elephant, and the man now. Therefore, you will never get any distinct form of knowledge. Thank all gods, I tell you. Thank all your stars that the mind changes so quickly. So quickly it changes. And the beauty is, like even in a tape, as you record new, how the old one gets erased. The mind, just as the new perceptions come, the old ones get erased. The only difference is, and it is imprinted here, somewhere in the impressions on the slabs of memory, the old ones are imprinted, new ones keep going. This is the mind. It is meant to change, and it keeps changing. It is a blessing. That is not a problem. The problem is one of taking myself to be the changing mind itself, and afterwards suffering all the changes. And I want to be constant, which is not possible. And therefore, the whole problem is not of change. The whole problem is taking myself to be the changing mind. So I am the one who, because of which the very changing thought is. I am the very content of each thought, in fact. That awareness which I am is always silence, and it can never be disturbed by a thought, please, for it is the very content of every thought. As the thought occurs in my mind, the thought itself is after all an awareful thought. Without an awareness there can't be a thought, and in the thought there is the awareness, and therefore awareness plus a name and form is thought, and and the one who recognizes himself as awareness, he can never lose sight of. An experience will be lost, knowledge cannot be lost. So in yatra yatra manoyati tatra tatra samadhayaha. It is a different type of samadhi that is being said here. Yatra yatra manoyati. Wherever the mind goes, there indeed is my samadhi. It is not a samadhi that I have to work for. Because wherever the mind goes, my samadhi is, means, so my appreciation of myself, it is never lost sight of, because it is knowledge. If it is an experience, definitely it will be lost. We have been, in fact, through all these experiences. Every time you work for an experience, and the experience is gone, again experience. Why Vishayanande Brahmanandaha, Vidyanande Brahmanandaha, Yoganande Brahmanandaha, someone said. When you experience an object that is desirable, if there is some happiness or joy, that joy is after all nothing but yourself. That joy is not somewhere from outside. It is after all tapped from out of yourself alone. Therefore, even in Vishayananda, that Ananda that is there is nothing but you. And that is why that Ananda, you love yourself, and because that Ananda is thy nature. So even Vishayananda means a sensory experience in which I find some pleasure. Even that pleasure is nothing but a lesha, a trifle of the joy that I am. And similarly, Vidyananda, suppose I discover something, Ureka, and when I discover something, I have discovered there is a joy in it, whether it is a discovery of this or that, whatever it is, there is a joy in it. In that joy also it is expression of myself alone. That is also Brahmananda for. There is no second source of Ananda. There is only one source of Ananda, and that is myself. Therefore, whenever there is a release in my mind, the mind offers itself or grants to itself a condition. In which condition, if there is some Ananda, that Ananda is because of a condition that is granted in my mind, it is called experience. And the man who always works for a condition of the mind, and again he doesn't know when he is going to be happy, think of it. A man, suppose he is happy, you ask him, I say, why are you happy? You ask him a question. Why are you happy? And how come you became happy? I don't know, Swamiji. Somehow I became happy. Because a similar experience you give him tomorrow, he is not that happy at all. And therefore happiness happens to you. Somehow or other, this fellow finds himself, he finds himself happy. Not that he commands happiness, he finds himself happy today, generally unhappy, now and then finds himself happy. Neither he works for unhappiness, nor he can work for happiness. Both he can't do, because if he can definitely know this is going to make me happy, and he can do it and then be happy, but he doesn't. Even the same thing he does yesterday, it made him happy. Let him do it today, he finds that it is boring. And today it is monotonous. And yesterday it was entirely a different thing. And today it is the same thing. Even in food it is the same thing for you. So nothing, even this, and same thing, suppose you love a thing, but your mood changes, is it not? I love music, Swamiji, but today I am not in a mood. That means what? Your happiness depends entirely upon moods. That means what? When will the right mood will come? You can't say, tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, I will get the right mood. Please come. You can't say please. That is why if you can say that, it is not a mood anyway. If you can't say that, then it is called mood. That is why Shankara called these fellows moodaha. Moodaha means the mood asya astiti moodaha. The one who has got the mood, it is my own etymology. So, moodaha means the deluded. The one who subjects himself to the mood, and that man, his life is booked in moods, and therefore there should be no mood except in grammar, please. So there is a potential mood and all that moods, you must have read in grammar. So except that mood, there should be no mood if this man has to be really make his life. If it is moods, neither I can decode you, neither I can expect you how you are going to behave, nor you can expect of yourself how you are going to be, because all depends upon moods. And who is going to decide the mood? Which mood is going to come when? Who is to decide? Well, chance will decide. Mr. Chance will decide. If chance has to decide when I am going to be happy, there can't be anything more uncertain than chance. Is there anything more uncertain than chance? Therefore, all your love, all your hope of living happy is pinned on to the hands of chance. That means your hope is a meaningless hope. And therefore, if this fellow does commit suicide, natural. If he doesn't commit suicide, well, it is only, what I can say, he has no courage, that's all. He has no courage to commit suicide, or he has got some hope, tomorrow will make me happy. Thus a man committed to moods is not a man at all, neither he is a woman, because woman also is the same problem, therefore. So this fellow, man or woman, one who is committed to moods, he doesn't make a life out of his, what you call, life. Okay. And therefore, Bhagavan says that this is considered jnanam Arjuna, etad jnanam iti proktam. This is indeed kshetra kshetrajnayoho yad jnanam tad jnanam. That alone is knowledge. Any other knowledge is not going to make his life a fulfilled one. And later, in 3 verses, Bhagavan tells Arjuna, this kshetram tat kshetram yachayadrikcha yad vikari yataschayati sachayo yat prabhavascha tat samasena me shrunu rishibir bahuda gitam chandobir vividaih pratak brahma sutra padaischaiva hetmadbir vinischitaihi. Arjuna, again I tell you in detail and in brief also. I'll tell you completely in brief what is exactly this kshetra, because he has not told. I have told all right, but he has not told here. What he has told, I have told in the beginning. So Bhagavan tells now the same thing what I said, he is telling here. So because what he said, I told in the beginning, that is what it is. So this he says now, yat yadrik, what is the kshetra? What constitutes the kshetra? And who is the kshetrajna? And what is his glory? All that I will tell you. And again he says, Rishibir Bahuda Gitam Chandobir Vividaih Pratak Brahma Sutra Padais Chaiva Hetu Madvihi Vinischitaihi. Hey Arjuna, this something what I've been talking, this knowledge, is not something new. Never go away with this feeling that Krishna has introduced a new cult. That Krishna cult and Krishna consciousness is not anything new, he says, Krishna says, but modern people may say something different. But he says, the Krishna is not introducing a cult, my dear. He says, Rishibihi Bahuda Gitam, Chandobihi Vividaih Pratak. So he says, Rishibihi, by the rishis in the even before. The same thing has been told in many ways in the Vedas. Chando Visishtaihi, Vedaihi Bahuda Gitam Rishibihi. In the Vedas, in the scriptures, they have been told in many ways, in manifold ways. They have been sung in manifold ways in the mantras, in various forms and various verses and chants. They have been the same truth had been unfolded long before. Not merely because the Vedas said we have to accept it, but then all that is said is upheld by logic too. It is not something that is irrational that is being said. It is something based upon personal experience of people. It is a logic that is based upon personal experience. And also what is said in the Shastra. And therefore he says, Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva Hetu Madbihi Vinischitaihi. It is not arbitrarily told that you are Satchidananda and you are asked to believe. All of you please believe that you are all Ananda and Satchidananda. It will be a belief, all right, a belief of a dukkhi, a fellow who takes himself to be a mortal, and he is asked to believe. You believe that you are immortal. How can he believe? The fellow knows that he is a mortal, and he finds in every truck a yama that is coming there. A Lord Death is there in the form of a truck all the time in the road. And thus this fellow, who is all the time round the corner, he finds a death. And such a fellow, he is told, say, you are immortal, believe. How can he believe that? He can't believe. Even if he wants to believe, the fellow will get up in the morning as a mortal and will go to sleep only as a mortal. The only release from mortality is when he sleeps. And in between, again the fellow will get up as a mortal form. He is a mortal for certain, he knows. And how is he going to believe it? It is against experience. It is against his own knowledge. And therefore, it is not a matter of belief. It is a matter for understanding. And therefore, Bhagavan says it is something that has been proved, unfolded by, with sufficient logic too. Because what is truth will not be illogical. Even though it is by logic we don't establish it. Because it is myself alone. It doesn't require any logical establishment. Like even when you see me, it is not logically you establish that I am here sitting. But it is by a means of knowledge you establish that I am here. You come to know that I am here not by logic. It is not an inferential knowledge. It is something that is perceptual. Similarly also, what I am is self-evident. The problem only is that what I am really, that is not known. Half known and half is not known. But unfortunately, half knowledge is no knowledge. In fact, half knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge. And therefore, half I know that I am so, I am a being who is existent, I know. I am a conscious being, I know. Now and then I am capable of becoming Sukhi also, I know. These things I know. And again, I had the experience of being free from all limitations. That also, an experiential knowledge I know. The only problem is a recognizing knowledge is not there. A knowledge which recognizes me, that knowledge is not there. And therefore, what do we require is only a pramana. And therefore, sufficient logic is advanced to make you see what it is all about. And the logic is used, like even a pole vaulter uses a pole, and so that I can leap, and throws the pole away. Similarly, logic is used because logic is necessary. All the problem is created by the intellect. And all the problems that are set by intellect, they are all problems born of fallacious logic, and they can be solved only by proving the fallacies in the logic. This is called neti, neti, netiti. So we negate what we are not. And again with the words, by a means of implication. By a means of implication, we just point out this is what you are. And the man recognizes for. So that implication means whether you directly say something or in an implied form you say something, that something is recognized. Like even when I say, the beard is going, you know very well the beard cannot walk. The beard also begins to walk away. Think of it. The beard doesn't walk. But then when you say the beard goes, you understand very well it is the bearded man that goes. It is not the beard that goes, it is the bearded man that goes. You supply the man and then understand it is the bearded man. The white runs when I say, it's a white horse that runs. Thus similarly, or the white horse is walking, please. See the white horse walking? Suppose I say, what is that? The white horse walking. Suppose it is really a white horse is walking, it's a simple sentence. Suppose there is a white horse walking, it is a simple sentence. And there is no implication. It is a simple sentence, you just see the meaning of it. Here you see there the white horse walking, no problem. Suppose there is no horse at all, much less any white. And there is a black man coming. And you say the white horse walking. What does it mean? And I see he's walking a little. I understand, yes, white horse is walking. The fellow is moving laterally more. There is white horse inside. You know that white horse? You don't know here? Don't know? Oh, don't know still? White horse, I suppose whiskey, I suppose. So white horse. Suppose I say the white horse is walking, and what is walking now? White horse doesn't walk. This white horse doesn't walk. I know very well. It is a fellow who has got a bottle of white horse inside. He is walking. That fellow is walking. It's very clear. This is called implication. And where the implication is involved, understand, wherever the implication is involved, the man must be more alert. Mere alertness is not enough. Because like even, that's why I tested you. So like even now, you all missed it because not that you don't know white horse, you must be knowing much more than myself because I don't know which is white horse, which is red horse, I don't know anyway. But then, so you must be knowing much more. But then the mind is alert, it catches the implication. So implication means it should be all alert. And therefore, even though the words, by loading it with implication, the truth is released. Wherever the implication is there, it is word stops. And after the word stops, there is something that is implied. And that is always silence. It is an unsaid word. It is the unsaid word that delivers the truth in fact. It is a word that doesn't deliver the truth. But then the word is necessary to imply. And afterwards the word stops. And there is an unsaid word, and which is silence, which is an implication. Like even the beard goes, the beard stops. It doesn't make any sense. But then the bearded man, the man is supplied, which is not there at all. I understand. In that silence that ensues after the word is pronounced, in that silence the truth is discovered immediately. This is called implication. Even a joke is like that. You always just the other side you see immediately. Then only you joke you appreciate. And therefore if a man, is another thing. If a man, while the implied sentence is used, he doesn't understand. Or when a joke is made, this fellow doesn't laugh. But then sometimes we find this fellow goes to the bathroom later after 10 days and he laughs for the joke that Swami. Till then it didn't occur to him. Oh, the fellow laughs after 10 days. And that laughter is again born of the joke that is made here, please. Again that is born of teaching alone. If you don't recognize the whole thing right now, and if you recognize it later, it is an unfortunate thing that you don't recognize it now. If it is not recognized, if at all he recognizes later, which is very remote, because when a teacher is teaching with flesh and blood, with all his love and eloquence, if he teaches, if it is not understood, then later he is going to understand it is a far remote cry. He is not going to understand. If at all he understands, again the glory goes to the teacher, not to the student, please. It is an old joke for which he laughed today. And therefore, it is he says this is nothing new. It is all something that is based upon logic. It is all the doubts are eliminated by logic. It is based upon your personal experience. When I talk about sleep, your dream, and your ananda, your happiness whenever you gain an experience, whenever you gain something desirable. So all these things are cited which are experienced by you. And therefore, all that is unfolded is with the material of your own personal experiences. That the world is mithya is all the time the world is declaring. It is not that I come and declare, the world declares itself every day. If it is something absolute, you can't knock off this world. You can't just get away from this world to go to sleep. And the world will come and knock at the doors of your sleep and enter into the sleep so that you won't sleep at all. Why? Because it is an absolute world, you can't give it up. But then I find the world just disappears the moment I withdraw. The relative nature of the world is all the time proved by your own personal daily experiences. And therefore what the Shastra does is, cites all your experiences and then unfolds the truth. And therefore he says, Rishibhihi Bahuda Gitam, Brahma Sutra Padaihi, it is Hetu Madbihi Vinishchitam cha. It is very well determined. It is not something that has got to be simply swallowed humbly. It is a matter to be understood, and therefore what is to be believed is believed, but what is to be understood is to be understood. Here is a thing that is to be understood. And therefore he says, it is very well proved in such books called Brahma Sutras. I have no time to talk about Brahma Sutra because it is Brahma Sutra means Sutra is a formula, a small little formula, but it contains a lot of matter inside, profound. A profound statement with minimum words and letters, and then which is Vishwato Mukam. It is said, a sutra is called that, what is that? And there is a verse that is there which says that Akshobhyam Anavadyam cha Sutram Sutra Vido Vidahu Alpaksharam Asandigdam Saravad Vishwatomukam Akshobhyam Anavadyam cha Sutram Sutra Vido Viduhu. All our definitions are in verses. Any definition, it is all in verses. And you find even mathematics are in verses in Sanskrit. And this, it talks about infinity, please. It talks about infinity. Kara, it is called. Kara is infinity. Purnam is infinity. So Kara, mathematical infinity is called Kara. Purnam is our infinity. But mathematical infinity is called Kara. Pujyam is zero. So these are all things that we find in Lilavati, a book on mathematics. And there it is all in verses. Remember, it is all in verses. Sanskrit is such a malleable language that you can stretch it to form verses on any topic. Well, the Brahma Sutra is, therefore it is said, Alpaksharam, Asandigdam, Saravad Vishwatomukam, Akshobhyam, Anavadyam cha, Sutram, Sutra Vido Viduhu. Just to give you an idea about what it is I am telling, it is not that very important. But then, Alpaksharam, that which is consisting of few letters, Alpaksharam. When there is a long word, a word with lot of letters, and when there is a smaller word, you go in for a small word. You must have read King's English, and there you go in for the familiar. You go in for the familiar to the far-fetched. You prefer the familiar to the far-fetched. You prefer the Anglo-Saxon to a Latin or Greek or German origin, and you go in for a smaller word and instead of a longer word. Same thing. Then the impact is severe. Because I write a language or speak language not for getting some kind of admiration from people. You use language for communication. And the one who is able to give the maximum punch in his language, that fellow is a master handler of language. Not the one who uses big words, that fellow is just hiding himself under these big words. Big words are nothing in fact. And therefore big words, after all, you have to get a few words, any number of big words. We can always get them. There's not a very difficult thing. But then big words don't really cut any ice. They don't really deliver goods. And therefore, the one who is able to use the language, the beauty of the language is how you handle it. In turning of the classes, in the choice of words, the words that are minimum and the words that are chosen are Anglo-Saxon, more Anglo-Saxon than Latin and Greek, then you find that that language, that particular English language, can really deliver goods. It has been delivering goods, I've been seeing. It does deliver goods if you know how to handle any language for the matter of that. Each language has got its own beauty. And unless you recognize the beauty and you know how to handle it, the language is always abused. And this here it is said, alpaksharam, the minimum lettered word is used. Alpaksharam asandigdam. It should not leave anything to be desired. You can be clear, but not at the cost of clarity, at the cost of brevity. Brief you can be, but not at the cost of clarity. So it should be brief and clear. One can be brief at the cost of clarity. One can be clear at the cost of brevity. To be brief and clear, it takes a mastermind. And therefore here these Brahma Sutras are like this, that it is born of a mastermind like Vyasa, and therefore, so it is brief, alpaksharam, but asandigdam, doesn't leave anything to be desired. And again, alpaksharam asandigdam saravat vishwatomukam. It is very profound saravat sutram. So it is something that has got sara, it is very profound. And again, vishwatomukam. One sutra can serve a number of purposes. It will give a number of answers to the same problem. Vishwatomukam. And again, he says akshobhyam, which doesn't waste its words, akshobhyam, where you don't find unnecessary adjectives and all that. He's a good sadhu. Generally we hear this, he's a good saint. I say saint must be good. Why are you wasting that word good? I don't understand. A saint must be. Is there a bad saint anywhere? I say saint means he should be good. Why do you say he's a good sound? He's a good saint. These are all abuse of words. That means your thinking is improper, please. That shows the improper, vague thinking, shallow, superficial thinking. And therefore a man who really means something, good means it is good. Bad means it is bad. He should mean it really. And that means that shows exactly the clarity in his thinking. It is very important. And therefore you need not learn anything in Vedanta. The minimum at least, it gives you the clarity in thinking. If of course it is taught by a teacher who is conscious of his words all the time. That's how we have been told. We have been taught like that all the time. Because it is, Brahma Sutra means it should be akshobhyam, anavadyam. And again it is told, it is saravat visutomukam akshobhyam anavadyam cha. And again it should not enjoy any defect of grammar. Just because you want to make it brief, you swallow all the verbs. You can swallow if it can be inferred, all right. And therefore it should follow, it should fulfill all the rules of grammar. Anavadyam cha, sutram sutra vido viduhu. These are the sutras composed by Vyasa, and these sutras deal with the entire, all the Upanishads, and all that is said in the Upanishads, they are all analyzed by these sutras, and these sutras are again unlocked by Shankara with his Bhashya, the commentary, and again that commentary, of course, to explain that we have got the profundity of the sutra, you will understand. How many commentaries are there for that one sutra called Atato Brahma Jignasa? It is one sutra. Atato Brahma Jignasa Janmadyasya Yataha Shastra Yonitvat. Each one is a sutra. Shastra Yonitvat. Tattu Samanvayat. On this one sutra, Tattu Samanvayat, Shankara writes about 10-15 pages. Keeps writing on and on and on it goes. And not that and every sentence of Shankara is so profound that one Vachaspati Mishra, he came and wrote a commentary on it. And he is so profound, another Amalananda, he came and wrote a commentary on it. And that is so profound, another Appaya Dikshita, a great man, and he wrote a commentary on it. By the time you read one sentence of Shankara, 2 days are over. Because you have to read that commentary, that commentary, that commentary, that commentary. I tell you, just to indicate the thoroughness of this learning. Everybody cannot become a teacher. Unless this thoroughness is there, then only he can be an authentic Vedantic teacher. So much is there. I may say what I say may be 1 or 2 things. But what is not said is so much. And what is not said should back all that you say. Then only there is authority in it. Then only there is truth in it. Anybody, anything say, you just question him 2 minutes, it's all over. It is all over. A man who can shake the fellow it's all over. In 2 minutes it can be finished. If a man who knows how to ask questions. So what I say this, our culture is this particular tradition of teaching is so thorough. The people have given their lives to it. And then each one has analyzed everything so thoroughly, completely, that there cannot be any doubt and nobody can shake that Vedantic master. If he is a master, he knows what he is, and in logic nobody is going to beat him. And in the sense means his mind is so clear about it. And if the other man has got some kind of logic, and he will do judo to that fellow, and he is finished by his own logic. And by the fallacy of his own logic, it is all over. What I say, it is not question of any competition or anything. It's a question of thoroughness. And I want you to know how thorough the people have gone. The whole tradition is a thorough tradition. Whether it is dance, or it is music, or it is spiritual tradition, the thoroughness is something that is amazing. I always wanted to find out some defect in this Vedanta. I was not going to accept anything just because somebody told it. So I always wanted to find out what are the defects in it. And every time I got beaten. Every time but beaten, afterwards I never got up. Okay. And that's how I became a sadhu, please. It is not just like that. Just like that, just because somebody said, and therefore good food you get because it's a bhiksha and all that. It's not like that, please. So, I say, as one who wanted to find out that some defect at least in it, because I found there is some charm in it in the beginning. But this charm, is it all true? Or it is something that is illusory? It is something that is just hypnotizing our minds. And is it a mere make-believe? Or there is something true? Thus I wanted to find out whether there are some defects in it. The more I got into it, I got inducted completely for. Every time I questioned something, I got beaten. For the answers are always so thorough. And the beating is so thrashing it was, that I felt that hereafter I will not fight at all. And thus I began trying to find out what all it is there. Thus, understand, it is so, therefore Bhagavan says, Brahma Sutra Padaischaiva Hetu Vadbihi Vinischitaihi. So Rishubhihi Bahuda Gitam, by those rishis, have been said so many times. And again it is upheld by such great giant intellects like Vyasas and Shankara and others. And therefore, Bhagavan says, it is nothing new about it, Arjuna. It is something good old thing it is. Even that Natya that she was dancing, don't think it is yesterday's or day before yesterday's. And it is something that is thorough. I tell you, it is such a thorough dance it is. You can't make symbols like that. You can't even imagine such symbols unless you know what it is. It is a Bharatanatyam. Bharata wrote. Long before some ding-dong age, we don't know when Bharata was. So we don't know when he was. So in those days, it was written there long before in the ancient days, Bharata wrote. And I have a book of Bharata. In original Sanskrit, I have got the Bharata. I tried to find out, I say, what it is all about. I tried to read. It is so, again, it is in verse form. That is also verse. And there again, the mudras, different mudras and things like that. It is such an integration. There is nritya, natya, abhinaya, ityadi. So it has got different angas in it. There is dance in it. There is abhinaya, there is gestures and things like that. This abhinaya, that she said, it is Krishna. It stands for Krishna. And there are so many, these are all later additions. But in the beginning, so various mudras that are there. So the limbs also, the face moves along with the movement. The eyes always see the movement when her hand goes there, and her eyes also go. These are all part of it. And thus, there is an integration. So with the action, your mind, everything is there. So that the whole personality is integrated by this process of dance itself. Where my hand is, there my eyes are, there my mind is also. And therefore, there is bhavana in it, there is an attitude, and there is the movement. And if such integration is there, then in my life also, between thoughts and my action, there will be natural integration. And again, there is rhythm. There is a beat that is there. To that the whole dance is just tuned to that beat. And she can never go out of tune. And thus, similarly also, rhythm. There is a beat that is there. To that the whole dance is just tuned to that beat. And she can never go out of tune. And thus, similarly also, to the Lord's dictates, to the Lord's mandates, as it were, those actions that are considered to be the right ones, which everybody can very easily understand what they are, and to that alone his whole life is hitched on. And thus from childhood onwards the child is taught. This dance is similarly, if you take music, it is thorough. It is not just simple bland music, please. Sa, re, ga. What is it? Da, do, ma? What is it? Do, re. Do, re. So it is not that alone. It is not that piano music alone. I don't say that I love Western music as well as the Indian music. There is no question, I love all types of music. Even a fellow squeaks, I like that. As long as he doesn't detain me from going to the class. I like all right. But then what I say, there is a thoroughness about it. So in between there is so much. There are other notes in between. Between sa, there are so many sas. There are so many re's. Thus, sa, re, ga, ma, like this. There are many sas, there are many re's, there are many gas. And that is why you find Indian music sometimes, it is very difficult. Shaky rather, is it not? Rather shaky. And all that. So that you cannot do it. In piano you try for that. I say, suppose, I just give you this. Jai Jai Govinda, Jaya Hari Govinda. Simple. Jaya Jaya Govinda, Jaya Hari Govinda. Very simple. This perhaps you can do it in piano. Jai Jai Govinda, Jaya Hari Govinda. Jai Jai Govinda, Jai Hari Govinda. You can do it. Jai Jai Govinda, Jai Hari Govinda. You can't do that. Try. Jai Jai Govinda, Jai Hari Govinda. You can't do that. You can't do that. So you can do it. Gaiye Ganapati Jagavandana. You can do it. Gaiye Ganapati Jagavandana. This you can do clearly. Shankara Suvana Bhavani Nandana Gaiye Ganapati Jagavandana. You can do it. Suppose I say Shankara Suvana Bhavani Nandana Gaiye Ganapati. You find it very